covers being applied to the 3 books that we are quoting from on this program. Beautiful covers they are, and we have introductions that are written to them. What I wanted to share was how people can buy them. If you want a printed version of Introduction to God, or a printed version of the 2-volume set of Yahowah, or a printed version of Questioning Paul, you have now a second option. Previously, the only way to get a printed version was to take it to a place like Kinko's, and you can download it free. All 3 books are available in their entirety, free online. But if you wanted to print it, I guess it was ridiculous to try to print it on your own home printer. You go through cartridges. Oh, wow. Wow. That's even more expensive. That's more expensive than it would be even to go to a Kinko's or an Office Depot and have them print it. But that's what a lot of people did. They just went to Office Depot or Kinko's, something like that, and Staples, and had it printed there. But it's really expensive to do that because of the length of the books. But now, if you'll go to the following website. Now, we're going to promote this because this is how Kirk makes a living.
No, I'm just honored to be there.
Kirk's compensation for this is the same as mine, which is 0. So we're not promoting these because we make a buck on them. That's not the case at all. We have done this because a number of people have come together to make it possible for those who are interested in buying these books to get them. I think that the price, considering the quality of the printing and the size of the books, is a terrific value. For example, the Introduction to God is, what about 1,000 pages?
At least.
Yeah, maybe 1,200 pages. Questioning Paul, the current version of Questioning Paul is about 1,200 pages. Yahowah is 2 volumes of about 1,600 pages each, and the prices are $39.95 for Introduction to God, $39.95 for Questioning Paul, and $41 a piece for each of the 2 volumes of Yahowah. Considering the price that you would pay for a textbook of half that length,
this is just cheap as dirt.
Oh, what a terrific value. And the quality, the printing quality was wonderful. I didn't like the cover quality was fine. I didn't like the graphics on the cover of the previous books. But you have created artwork that depicts the proper titles and the format that the oldest alphabet would have them in. Beautiful artwork. And so we now are in a position where we would strongly encourage those who want to share, like give Questioning Paul to a open-minded Christian, that you think there is a chance that they will consider what it has to say. Because there has been no one the world over that has read Questioning Paul that's remained a Christian. So
give it to them in November and ruin their Christmas.
Yeah, during the pagan holidays. In fact, we can talk about what's written inside the front covers now. But here's the website, and we're going to be sharing this a number of times because these, I think, are wonderful tools to share with others. It's Claritors, C-L-A-I-T-O-R-S. So CLAITORS.com. So that's the name of the publishing company. Been in business for decades. So CLAITORS.com. When you come to their homepage, you can search by title, Introduction to God, Questioning Paul, or Yahowah, and they will come up individually. Or because of the fact that we have decided to go ahead and associate these with my name, and the reason for doing that, Kirk, has been that it's much easier to find these things when you search under my name. because I'm known for having written them. If you search under my name, and so you go to search our site and you put in Craig Winn, CraigWinn, and then you have the search. You can leave it anywhere you want. All fields are take it to author and hit search. It'll bring up all three. And you can order them individually or collectively if you wish. I have used them to get the original versions. They just everything about the experience was first rate. And so I would encourage those who want to read what Yahowah had to say in Intro to God, read what Yahowah had to say and yada yada, maybe a second or third time, or share what they learned in questioning Paul with an open-minded Christian. And this is a marvelous way to do it because you don't have to sit by the computer screen all day. And I'm going to order 3 more copies now today that we have these ready. But let's give a quick introduction to each of the 3 books. We're devoting the second hour of this program to questioning Paul. Questioning Paul came about, Kirk, because a member of the covenant, a remarkable guy, David, who goes by Dode now, in the land down under in New Zealand, a farmer, was listening to a radio show where Christian ministers got on and said that Paul annulled the Torah. And they cited Galatians to prove it. And at the time, I had not, I thought that, Paul's writings are included in what's called the Christian New Testament, and so I thought, that Paul was what he claimed to be. And this person said, obviously they're misquoting Paul, or what Paul said can't have been inspired by God, is what Dode from Down Under wrote. He says, if you have time, would you mind checking it out? Go into, use your tools. Go in and translate Galatians for me. And, at this time, Kirk, I was still thought that there was a renewed covenant. And I thought that Yosha brought in a renewal of the covenant.
Right.
And I knew that he didn't annul the Torah. His first public address, I did not annul the Torah.
Yeah.
Every jot and tittle, the smallest letter and every stroke of every letter of that's in the Torah and Psalms will continue to be in full effect so long as the heavens and earth exist. So I knew that the Torah was still the source of Yahweh's direction, teaching, and of the covenant. But I thought that maybe Yosha's fulfillment of the first 4 Mikra would have somehow reaffirmed that. So I refer to it as the renewed covenant. And then a couple of things happened along the way. I started writing this book trying to take the view that Paul was not condemning or annulling the Torah, but instead was condemning and annulling the oral law, the Talmud. And so I started writing this book. I started reading Galatians, translated, found the oldest manuscripts of it, Parchment 48, which dates to probably within 20 or 30 years, the time that Paul wrote his first letter, and of course less the time than by the time he wrote his last. And I was going along merrily trying to say, oh, yeah, he's talking. I'm just assuming that he had to be, right? That he was criticizing the Talmud and the Jewish oral law just as did Yosha. But after a while, I ran into a real problem. First was when he said that the old system was pornography. He's got to be talking about the Old Testament. And then, he gave a chronology of his life, and it was wholly and completely inconsistent with his other testimony regarding his life. I didn't.
You got a problem.
And then the writing quality was abysmal. Another problem. And then he was making claims that had no basis in fact, and another problem. And then he quoted Chabauk to say that the Torah could not save, and son of a gun, that rascal, he not only took the statement out of context and misquoted it, but his conclusion was the antithesis of what the statement that Yahowah made actually said. I've got some problems. I just kept on going along trying to deal with those problems until I came to where he said that the covenant, that it was memorialized on Mount Sinai, therefore in the Torah, was with Hagar and its slaves. That's just factually untrue.
Right.
Absolutely the antithesis of the truth. And so I could no longer do that. So I wrote continued writing this book under this suggestion of a good friend who said, you're going to be more credible if you give Paul the benefit of the doubt all the way until you come to a point where you can no longer give him the benefit of the doubt, and from that point on, be critical. And so I finished the book from that point of view, and we published it. About 600 pages long. And then a member of our covenant family, Kirk, sent me an email. And by the way, that's how Questioning Paul really came into existence. It was just a bunch of emails from a bunch of people that said, you really ought to look at this. So this person said, there's a comment where Paul talks about, we just quoted it in Galatians 2, where it was presumed that Paul was running in vain and that he was promoting a false and worthless, counterproductive message. And they said, that running is found in Chabauk and Habakkuk. And there's maybe a tie to Paul and Habakkuk. Some people are suggesting that there's a tie somehow to this running quote, and that Paul actually quotes Habakkuk twice.
Son of a gun.
Son of a gun. So I went back and I did what I love to do. I studied the Hebrew text of one of Yahweh's prophets. And oh my goodness.
That was a revelation.
That was a revelation. And we'll talk about what we learned in Habakkuk when we return, and how that transformed Questioning Paul from 600 pages to 1,200 pages, and what you will get if you were to order it today. So, Kirk, as I started this book and then came to Habakkuk, I was faced with the reality that I was wrong. And then this idea of giving Paul the benefit of the doubt and then finally lowering the hammer when there was no other option, I couldn't do it anymore.
No.
And I knew that I had to rewrite the book and to begin right off the bat with both guns blazing, because in Habakkuk, written exactly 666 years before Paul authored his first letter to the Galatians. I mean, the coincidence there is mind-numbing. And of course, the one that the Christians identify with 666, the Antichrist, is not an Antichrist. It's the Torahless one.
Torahless.
And who is the Torahless one?
I think the one coming that'll be like Paul, actually.
Oh, he's the one that's already been here.
Well, yeah,
the ultimate Torahless one is Paul. I mean, there is nobody more Torahless than Paul. Will there be another man, demon-possessed, that will be like Paul in these last days? Absolutely. But make no mistake, the Torahless one is Paul. And we know it. And so that was mind-numbing. And then I began to read it. And it says that this man, there's a lone individual, one lone individual, talks about him having a soul. So, this can't be, and Christians want to write it off to say he was talking about Babylon. Now, there's a reference to Babylon in the first chapter. And there's a reference to Babylon for a reason. What is the religion of Christianity based upon?
Babylon.
Babylon. The whore of Babylon is going to advance Christianity. The Torahless one is going to advance Christianity. Right? So that's why there's a reference. But all the way through the second chapter, Yahowah is through Chabauk, which means embrace this, accept this, is speaking of a singular individual, a singular male individual. And he says that he's going to emerge at the time that the Moed Mikra are being fulfilled. Well, that would be, 33 CE on our pagan calendars. Where was Paul at that time?
He was in Jerusalem.
Right, at his provincial school, wasn't he?
Yeah, a rabbi, right.
Yeah, by his own testimony. And that he would emerge at that time. It says that his nature will be arrogance. And Paul in 2 Corinthians talked about how, his arrogance wasn't arrogance because, it was justified because of the superiority of his revelations that he was arrogant, and his arrogance was ultimately kept in check because Satan possessed him.
You can't get more arrogant than what I say.
Oh, yeah, I know. When God's... right. The purpose of all of these books is to convey what Yahowah says, and that any time you go into what I say, you're treading on either thin ice or you're in opposition to God. Okay. So it says that he will be arrogant. It says that he will be presumptuous, that he will make claims about himself that are arrogant and untrue. It says that his audience will be Gentiles. What did Paul claim for himself?
Oh, 9.9%.
Right. It says he's going to be fixated on the male genitalia and yet be in opposition to circumcision. Boy, that's Paul. And then it says that this soul named Shaul. What was Paul's given name? Shaul will be the plague of death.
I think Yahowah told us real clear.
Oof. Yeah, and then he goes on to say that no one who puts their faith in him, who follows him, will be satisfied. Not anyone.
None.
Zero. And Chabauk, who has been made so that he can listen to Paul's rhetoric and read his letters, so that he can write about this. Even gets in the middle of it and says, because Pauline doctrine is the idea that God died for your sins, so all you have to do is believe that he died for your sins. And Chabauk could say, what in the world is wrong with him? God, you can't die. Who in the world would suggest that God can die? Are you crazy?
If he did, who could kill him?
Yeah, who's going to kill him? Who's going to kill him? Well, I guess in Paul's world, the mighty Romans. The mighty Romans. There you go. So when you read this and you go, oh my. And then you take and you carefully reread under those circumstances what Yosha said. And you come to realize that he spoke of one that was lowly and little, that would be demeaning the Torah, negating the Torah, that would be called lowly and little. What's Paul's chosen name?
It means lowly and little.
In Latin, doesn't it? He chose the name lowly and little. Yosha named him, and then he described him, and then he condemned him. So what do you do when you're confronted with the realization that Yahowah and Yosha condemned this man? And let's think of some of the ways that Yosha did that I didn't notice initially. One is in the Sermon on the Mount when he says that the one who encourages you to dismiss the Torah, which was Paul, will be called lowly and little. And Paulos means lowly and little in Latin. And then he talks about a wolf in sheep's clothing. We talked about that yesterday, or day before yesterday. Yeah, Paul was the Benjamite wolf. And he himself admitted that he faked his true nature to take advantage of people in one of his letters.
Yeah, phony.
Yeah. And then he goes on to say, I came in my Father's name and you haven't accepted me, but one will come in his own name. Paul is the only one that changed his name, that was universally accepted, and you will accept him.
Yeah, find one in the Torah.
Right. Yeah, then he warned his disciples. It says, that if just because one is calling me to Christ doesn't make them believable. Like they will mislead many, even the set apart.
Yes.
And then he goes on to say, if somebody claims to see me in the wilderness, they're lying, don't follow them.
Right.
And that's Paul's very claim. And then he's writing in Revelation through Yahukanan. you're talking about Paul made the claim that the Gentile world was given entirely to him, and we already have proof that that's not true based upon the fulfillment of Yahowah, which is chronicled in Acts, where the set-apart Spirit imbued the ability to speak Gentile languages.
They understood, right?
Yeah, on the disciples and the followers of the way, so that they could communicate to them. And then you had Yosha choose Yahowah to convey his truths to the world in what was at the time the Greek capital, Ephesus. And he didn't choose Paul. Chose Yahowah, one of his disciples. And then you've got him saying that in the first letter to the Ephesians, to Ephesus, you were not lured away by the false apostle. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, for every one of those things, either Yosha was lying or he was dribbling irrelevant information, because if it ain't Paul, there's no one in all of human history that fits any of those, much less all of those condemnations.
There's none that he doesn't fit. In fact, I read your blurb for the inside cover, and I have to tell you, it would be unfathomable, really, to continue with Christianity if you carefully consider what you wrote.
Just on the inside cover.
Just on the inside cover. I mean, of course, I'm many years down the road now.
Yes.
And having listened to you do all this debate on Blog Talk Radio when you started, but my gosh, I mean, just think of that. I'm kind of a list guy. You write a list down here, and then you write on the other side of the page, you write what?
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Yeah. In fact, if you wouldn't mind, during the next commercial break, if you can find that, because I don't have it at my fingertips, we'll share it.
Okay. Maybe Terry can pull it off real quick.
Yeah, and then the next thing that changed for me is I had a Cambridge scholar that I'd been communicating with that still had that knew what I was writing about Yahowah was true, but still said, it doesn't change the fact there's a New Testament, a new covenant, and the proof of that is Jeremiah 31. Mm-hmm. So in the midst of all this,
still plowing that field?
Yeah. So in the midst of all this, I was confronted with the fact that I was wrong. There is no renewed covenant. The covenant absolutely hasn't been renewed, and that it can't be renewed with the Gentile church. I mean, there is no statement, I don't think, in the entirety of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, as devastating to Christianity as Jeremiah 31, which Christians, out of context, says gives them is the one lone prediction that there would be a New Testament, and that they were the beneficiaries of it. Mm-hmm. But, oh my God, when you read it in context and read it accurately in Hebrew, what it does is devastates Christianity. There is no renewed covenant. Just plain in fact, there can be no New Testament. What Yosha said is that...
but the whole concept, once you pointed out so many times, is that the renewed covenant is the ultimate part about it is when he puts the Torah in your heart. Now, you cannot have a Torah that is pornographic, thrown away, ignored, and then he's going to turn around and put it in your heart.
You can't have a New Testament that changes and moves away from the Torah for this faith-based religion, only to have, when the covenant is actually restored, to have a wholesale integration of the Torah.
Yeah.
That would make God schizophrenic.
Yeah. And all of us nuts, too.
Oh, nuts.
So which way do I go?
Right. And the church, of course, is a Gentile institution. Right. And the renewal of the covenant is specifically with Israel and with Yahowah. Mm-hmm. So, oh my God, and it speaks of the renewal of the covenant around events that have not yet taken place. So the covenant will be renewed, reaffirmed, which is the primary meaning of Kodesh. Kadash, but it hasn't happened yet.
No.
So now I can't. You can't refer to anything in the Christian New Testament as legitimate. Now you can pick and choose parts of of Matanya and Yahokanan and render them out of English, out of Greek, back into Hebrew, which is the language that Yahushua spoke, and try to convey it as accurately as possible from there. But oh my goodness, it's the book that Paul comprises half of, from God's perspective, doesn't exist.
Well, especially in the last few weeks, my contention has been, how do you keep the witness writings even in it?
Yes.
I mean, you can't. I have known since college days. I've heard preachers talk reconciling Paul to Jacob. They always do Jacob because they don't want to pick on Peter, But regardless, how do you keep both of them in the same book and carry it around?
Yeah. Well, actually, the disagreements between Peter and Paul are vastly greater than between Jacob and Paul, and of course the preachers are willing to
work versus faith.
Oh yeah, they're willing to discard James, Jacob. They're willing to discard him. They know they can't discard Shimon Kepech, because their church was allegedly built on him. You're right, so they can't, upon this rock I will build my church, is what they say, and that's Peter. But no, that's not what Yosef said at all. He said, upon this rock, and he said sur in Hebrew, and he used all to be upon, which also means to approach, and I will build was bana in Hebrew, which is to build the family home and to establish the family name. My mikra is what he said. My called out invitations to meet and to be welcomed. And that's what he actually said. But anyway, the Christian church can't get rid of Peter, because that was said to Peter, and they go poof when that happens. But it's the primary conflict was between Peter and Paul, and it's irresolvable.
Well, Terry was kind enough to run up here with a copy of what you wrote, and here's what you wrote, and I read last night, and it was just kind of synopsis. Some of this you just addressed, but let me read it to you if you will. The image on the cover presents the given Hebrew name of Paul, author of half of the Christian New Testament in the original alphabet. It means question him. It is the name of an unique individual Yahweh expressly warned us about through his prophet, specifically calling Shaul, parentheses, Paul, the plague of death. Yahowah also warned us about Paul, referring to him as a false apostle in Revelation, as a wolf in sheep's clothing during the instruction on the Mount, the Sermon on the Mount, as someone not to be believed or followed for claiming to have seen him in the wilderness during the Olivet Discourse, and as the one who came in his own name, who would be accepted, while coming in his Father's name, he would be rejected. This man, whom Christians believe was inspired by God, consistently contradicts God, his prophets, and his disciples, and yet in spite of admitting that he was insane, that he was perverted, a fake, a demon-possession, and demon-possessed in his letters, Christians side with Paul over Yahowah, Yahushua, the Torah, the Psalms, the prophets, and the disciples. How could this be? If I just read that and I was questioning Christianity in my mind, even slightly, and then I said, okay, if this guy is true,
right,
I would approach it again the same way I approached it the first time I had yada yada. I would say, okay, let's do some research here.
Right. This guy's made some really profound statements here.
Absolutely.
And this is fish or cut bait time now. Yeah. So what am I going to do?
So where are you going to go? I mean, you're going to go to those letters and things, and you're going to go to the lexicons, and you start reading them, and you go, wow.
Right. Wow. The difference too is that, and what that does is right there in your face. It lays down the gauntlet, and I'm on the side of Yahowah. I'm unequivocal. I'm uncompromising. I've expressed moral outrage and indignation, and have exercised good judgment.
Right.
And if you don't like what Kirk just read, which I wrote a few days ago, that is the inside cover of Questioning Paul, then go and demonstrate that any of it is wrong. Because if only one statement in there is right, Paul's wrong. And if they're all right, everything about Paul and Christianity is wrong.
And I want to tell you, when I was a Christian, I had a concern about Paul in regards to there's no quotes, no red letters, as we used to say in the red letter edition. There's nothing there. Why doesn't he ever quote him? And why is he so hard to understand that somebody has to interpret him?
Right. If I was representing you, if you told, if I were trying to convey to the world that I was your lone authorized agent for the entire world outside of your hometown in Northern California.
Okay.
And I made that claim. And I never once showed any of your art. I never once quoted anything from your classes and your teachings. But I claimed that I was the exclusive agent for Kirk Miller. Would that be credible?
I may have to get a new agent.
Yeah, well, same thing is true with Paul. So not only will you get 1,200 pages of information, and the way that the book works, Kirk, as you know, is that it begins by asking Christians 20 questions. And the reason it begins by asking Christians 20 questions is that the only people who rejected questioning Paul were Christians, particularly Christian pastors, who didn't get past page 2 or 3 and just rejected it because, well, to suggest that their New Testament wasn't inspired or that Paul was a false apostle was just so far beyond their willingness to, they couldn't process it. So I decided I'd begin with 20 questions. And I asked Christians 20 questions that they cannot answer about the existence of a church, the existence of a Trinity, the existence of an individual named Jesus, the myth of Christ and Christian, Christmas and Easter, Sunday worship, and 20 of these questions. And asked them the questions and provided the context for demonstrating that there is no viable answer for them, and ultimately with each of them to say, now, realizing that your religious leaders lied to you deliberately on each of these 20 things that are all essential to your religion, why do you still trust them? What else do you suppose they lied to you about?
That was why it was so easy for me to just throw the book down and say, okay, if that's true, I got to walk away.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah.
I picked it back up and kept reading.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. It's these are unanswerable questions, and in just a matter of few words, I can walk Christians through a logical presentation that is irrefutable on 20 issues that destroy the religion, just to get them to say, all right, now that I've at least opened to the realization that pastors and priests and religious publishing institutions have deliberately lied to me about these things.
And they have to be.
Yeah.
Be deliberate.
Deliberate. Oh, yes, deliberate.
Accidental or just a scribble error. That will not suffice.
Right.
You know, I think I told you the day that the preacher was on, the famous preacher was on TV, who, I don't know whether it was your book or some book like it, but I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't questioning Paul, where he said somebody sent me this book about Paul and how he could not be apostle, and of course I won't even look at it, because it's unfathomable to him that such a thing could happen.
Yeah, unfathomable. And yet but it was fathomable to him that God would appoint someone to contradict him and to annul everything that he had said and done.
Apparently so.
And it's fathomable to him to base his religion on somebody who admitted he was demon-possessed.
I mean, I'm laughing in a very sad sort of way. I don't know how to deal with that. I mean, gosh.
Yeah. So, it's fathomable to him to have a religion named after an individual whose name they don't even know?
Or does it matter?
Wow.
But that's their retort, you know. It didn't matter.
It doesn't matter what you call him.
You know, no, don't. Yeah, you can call me, you know, whatever.
And that everything that God said was mean. It was enslaving. that it was no longer valid, and that you could discard it all because all you have to do is believe. Wow.
Well, how do you have faith in something that you know is a known lie?
So I'm going to discard a 1,200-page analysis, because what this book does is it realizes that Galatians is the first book that Paul wrote. And so it systematically goes through Galatians, every word of Galatians, providing the readers with 5 translations of every statement that Paul made. 5 different translations, my own, plus 4 independent translations. Scholarly translations, popular translations, old translations, and new translations.
One that they totally rely on to sell Paul.
Right. And so presents all of that, and then statement by statement dissects what he has to say. Compares what he said to what God said to show that it's impossible that Paul is a truth teller. And then, in addition to that, we go into what Yahowah had to say about Paul, what Yosha had to say about Paul, what Yahowah had to say about the things that Paul condemns, like circumcision, like the covenant, like the Torah, and what Paul has to say about them and how they're in complete and total conflict. And then we venture into, because some would say, oh, well, that's just unfair to only make it one letter, and his most important letter was to the Romans. So, I dissect much of Romans the same way, showing it to be irrational, sheer lunacy, invalid. And then, of course, we just quoted on yesterday's program from Corinthians to prove that Paul was demon-possessed by his own admission. It's worth reading, folks. Worth sharing.